Hello and welcome back to the channel. I am so excited today because I am joined by a guest, and Beverly is a Guild Certified Feldenkrais Practitioner and founder of Pausture, a mobile app making awareness through movement lessons accessible to more people. And we're going to hear a little bit about that today. Beverly came to the Feldenkrais method through a back injury, but what she discovered went far beyond pain relief. Over time, her relationship with her body shifted from performance and control to curiosity, and her complicated relationship with food quietly changed along with it. She completed a 4-year Guild certification, opened a private practice, and founded Pausture to bring this work to people who need it most. Her guiding question: what if the way you move is the way to change how you feel in your body? So I'm very excited to be talking to you today, Beverly. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to connect with you and share new information about this method and how much it's changed my life and what I saw with the women I worked with in my private practice, and also to share research that supports the conversation we're going to have today.
Amazing. I love that. Thank you so much. So I'll start off by asking, I know obviously I've introduced you a little bit, but can you tell us a little bit more about your journey and how you came to be doing what you're doing today?
I was overweight as a child and did my first diet probably at the age of 10. And that began decades of hyper focusing on a diet and doing it perfectly until
Yeah.
I made a mistake. And then the binging started. So the cycling of complete restriction to binging. And in my 30s, I discovered running after being pretty inactive most of my life.
Mhm.
I started running in my 30s, and I began to use that as a tool for managing both my mood. The physical activity did help my mood,
Yeah.
but I also used it as a lever for more calories. So a lot of extreme exercise, and that extreme exercise led to doing Ironman Hawaii.
Oh,
So
wow.
doing doing it was really almost the equivalent of a full-time job, how much I was spending exercising. And about 5 years after Ironman, I was working in a very high stress environment at
Mm.
Facebook. And I believe that that stress and the control I had and the movement patterns I had, a combination of factors led to me putting my back out in a way it had
Okay.
never gone out before.
Wow.
And so I tried all the modalities that had worked for me before. And in getting to Ironman, I had quite a big team of people that I was outsourcing my self-care to. I didn't understand self-care in a way of actually caring for myself. It was, how do
Yeah,
I
yeah.
pay somebody to help me to feel better? And so after 3 weeks of not being able to walk upright, I literally could only walk in a 90-degree angle.
Wow.
I made my way into a Feldenkrais. I know the name is tricky. It rhymes with nice. I made my way into this Feldenkrais awareness through movement lesson, and it was like nothing I had ever done before. And I thought it was weird and I thought it was strange. But at the end of the lesson, I stood up vertically with my pain was gone.
Wow. That's
And
amazing.
and it was the right day, the right lesson, the right moment. So I'm not trying to say
Mm.
this is the one fix. It typically is a process for dealing with something like that. But that I left me so deeply curious. What could
Mm.
have possibly happened? And I truly didn't understand.
Mm.
And I didn't want the back pain to come back because I I needed to get back to running. That's how I could burn more calories. So how can I keep the back pain away?
Mm.
So I began doing the lessons daily before I went to work. And before I had the term nervous system regulation, frankly, I didn't know I had a nervous system.
Yeah.
I began to sleep better. The challenges I was having at work were somehow softening.
Mm.
And within a few weeks, I was absolutely amazed and still didn't quite understand what was changing. And my original theory was there's a lot of rib opening lessons. So I thought, oh, my ribs are opening. So I'm breathing better. And since I'm breathing better, I'm sleeping better. And so for
Mm.
me, it was very musculoskeletal because, again, I didn't identify as having a nervous system. But what was happening is it was downshifting my high strung go, go, go um, to really just softening and finding choice in
Mm.
how I responded to people. And so within a few weeks, I felt a pretty dramatic difference. And I began repeating the lessons, and they weren't as magical when I repeated them. So I knew very early on it was the novelty of the lessons that was
Mm.
important.
Yeah.
So I began foraging for lessons the way I used to forage for food and to find the novelty of the lesson. And then not knowing I didn't understand eating disorder recovery, but what I decided to let go of my working out and I stopped working
Mm.
out because I was time constrained and I had to choose. I was feeling better, but it was, do I run or do I do one of these lessons? And I let go of the physical activity. I returned to it eventually, but
Mm.
really because of the way I was feeling and slowing down and being more present, it just was something I needed and began doing
Mm.
consistently.
Amazing. And so many questions. So did that lead you then to, because obviously you're now, you did became Guild certified, you started this app. Like, what was the journey from that? So, your journey so far is that it's helped you personally and sounds like had an enormously dramatic effect on you. What then led you to then retrain, essentially?
My initial thought was I was working at Facebook and we were trained for
Mm.
scale. Don't help 100 people, help a billion. Don't build something unless it's for 1 billion people.
Yeah.
So that was at the time. So I was probably a year into doing this lesson before I was like, wow, this has changed my life.
Mm.
And why do people not know about it? And how do we get more people to know about it?
Mm.
And I thought this needs to be built. I need to contact the people in charge of this organization and I need to teach them about scale was my first thought, but I still just didn't understand. And I come from a place of I want to understand something before
Mhm.
I make a phone call and ask them they need to change how they're doing things. So I thought I need to learn this, and I'm 100% convinced this is my future. But I looked into the training program and it was 4 years long, 8 weeks of year, 800 hours. And
Wow.
I thought, I'm going to apply because they don't accept everybody. I thought, I'm going to
Hmm.
apply. And if I get accepted, I will balance the training with working at Facebook until I run out of vacation days. And that was my plan. And something interesting happens when you have a well-regulated nervous system. I was able to manage the 4 years of training while still working at Facebook full
Wow.
time by working remotely during those 8 weeks, by the additional vacation days I earned through my time there. But I was able to manage both. And toward the end of my training, I knew I needed to commit to this and to leave Facebook. So I resigned from Facebook. And my mentor at the time said, my idea was always to build an app, but my
Mm,
mentor, who just became my source of understanding the method in addition to my training.
mm,
And my mentor said, you can't build your app until you work with people one on one because you don't understand this method
yeah.
until you see how it changes people.
Yeah.
And
That's
right now,
very true, right?
yes. And it's interesting because I've always been type A, and working at Facebook, it was move fast and break things and get things done quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the fact that I slowed it down and
Mm,
opened a private practice, and it is very true, the profound changes in the learning that occurred, that not only did I back burner the app, I honestly I abandoned it
oh,
because
wow.
I really was enjoying working with people one on one.
Mm,
And then a few years into that, people always asked me, whatever happened to your app, whatever happened to your app? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know. And so then I began doing both. I was working privately with clients and then in the background started reaching out to teachers because I don't teach in the app. I brought in some of the
Mm,
top teachers who train. And as I started doing both, I did realize that a nervous system to help people with this method is a very different nervous system from a person who builds a business. And so I
mm.
tried to do both for a while, and then eventually I pulled back my one-on-one private practice. And it was a tough decision because I enjoy working with people one-on-one, and the growth and development I have as a person, as you probably know in your business, how much you learn from that.
Mm,
But I still had that build for scale in
yeah.
the back of my mind, and knowing how many people need access to this method. So I shifted gears quite a bit to launch Pausture.
Amazing. Amazing. So interesting. So, I mean, you've mentioned quite a few times this idea about nervous system regulation. And actually, this is something that I work on with my clients because often, as people who struggle with their relationship with food, one element of that is helping them regulate their nervous system. So, tell us a little bit more about how does Feldenkrais method help people do that? What's going on there?
I'll share my personal experience and why it worked for me.
Hmm.
So I had undiagnosed ADHD, and so I don't know why breath work was difficult for me. And I have various theories. But the reality is, whenever I tried to do breath work, it put me into anxiety. And sitting
Okay.
still for traditional meditation also made me anxious.
Yeah.
So the research shows eating disorders, ADHD, all these things can be helped with meditation.
Mm,
It just wasn't accessible for me.
mm.
And so for these lessons, first and foremost, they're audio lessons. They are not demonstrated. And as somebody whose listening skills were not particularly strong, having to listen to the verbal cues, I had to listen. So, of course, there were times my mind would wander. And when I was doing recorded lessons at home, I could rewind them. But just listening intently so that I understood how to move,
Mm.
my to-do list, my anxiety about whatever was going on, I became really present in the moment for the first time in my life.
So just explain to listeners or watchers what actually happens, because I don't know whether people will have come across this method before. So you hear an audio recording of someone's voice telling you to move your body in a certain way. What does that look like? What kinds of things are people are doing?
So there are literally thousands of lessons, and in any orientation, so there's lessons lying on the floor, there's lessons sitting in a chair, there's lessons standing up. But the lessons I gravitated to, and I think there's huge benefit for, is lying on the floor. So
Yeah.
the app is, we have sitting lessons in the app, but the intro series and the initial series that we recommend, you can do any lesson you want, but the progression of how we recommend it is lying on the floor. So
Yeah.
lying on the floor, closing your eyes, listening to what to do, and following along. So it
Mm.
may be putting your hand on your forehead and rolling your own head.
Yeah.
And that alone, research now shows, activates your vagus nerve to shift from fight or flight into rest and digest. And so the simple act of lying on the floor, giving your weight over to gravity, and making the movements. And we have had people sign up for the app and cancel, and I'm always curious why it's not working for
Mm.
somebody. And
Mm.
very, very common feedback is somatics is visual. I must have a visual. And you need to have videos. And my developer said the same thing. Where's the videos? And it's not something I'll compromise on
Hmm.
because of the benefit of listening.
Mm.
And neuroscience also supports when you shut off your visual cues, visual processing takes a big part of the resources of your brain when you're
Yeah.
processing a visual image. So your brain is busy processing also with a demonstration. You are mimicking somebody else's performance
Yeah. Yeah.
of a movement. And we've all been performing through other modalities, performing how the teacher does it. And the way your nervous system needs to move is not
Mm.
the way somebody else needs to move.
And I so agree with that because for anyone watching, I have tried this app and I've been through maybe about half of the introductory session. One thing I've really noticed is different to, let's say, if you're doing yoga, you're really concentrating, whether you're watching it on an app or watching someone, you're really concentrating. Your focus is not on your own body, it's on their body and trying to match their body. What I've really noticed is, so I've done the lying down ones, which really, when you said the line, I was like, yes, I really like them. You're lying down, I've got my phone here so I can listen to it. And then you're concentrating on your body and how your body is moving. And as it's telling you the kind of, feel what the floor feels like under maybe your sitting bones or your hands or your shoulders. And then that's making you concentrate on what's happening under your shoulders rather than visually looking at someone else lying on the floor. So that really makes a lot of sense. But in some ways, until you've tried it, you maybe don't realize how much sense it makes, that kind of focus on your own body rather than someone else's.
And it may be difficult for people at first
Yeah,
because, which is why people cancel the app and they're like, this isn't
yeah.
for me. And what
It
I will
makes you slow
always,
down.
yeah, I will say it's not for you today
Hmm.
because sometimes it does take a shift. And so some people I've talked about it to. So one feature I put in the app, which is goes against the grain of the traditional method, but you can do a lesson at 2 times speed. You can't, I think, instead of saying the traditional lessons are 45 minutes to
Mm.
longer. And I think in today's society, a lot of people's attention span is not
Yeah,
there for that. And
absolutely.
all, and most traditional lessons start with really long body scans so that you can do a comparison before the lesson and after the lesson.
Mm.
But I cut those from most of the lessons in the app because if you have no interoception and you're just lying there, it ends up just feeling frustrating.
Yeah.
So I think getting into the movement early on and noticing the movement releases a little bit of that frustration. And if you're going fast and too big, I'm not going to say that's wrong. That's
Mm.
what your nervous system needs today.
Mm.
And over time, the cues and the lessons will say, can you do it with less effort? Can you do it
Yes.
slower?
Yeah.
And one of my favorite cues is, can you go half the speed you're going
Mm.
now? So if you're going super fast, half is going to be different
Yeah.
for everybody. But the more you slow down and differentiate how you're feeling, the more your brain wires for change.
Mm. Interesting. And you also mentioned about interoception. And again, this is something that I teach my clients, that awareness. Tell me a bit about that. We've talked a little bit about it, but tell me a bit more
So,
about that.
so again, I have found with a lot of somatic practices, it will be notice how you feel as you breathe. And for me, I would just get anxious. And
Mm.
so this is the interoception is built by noticing as you're lying on your side and rolling your hip, how is your hip rolling against the
Mm.
floor?
Mm.
And then what we do a lot of, which is foreground and background. So being able to hold your attention in two places, which is why I think the method has improved my ADHD symptoms.
Mm.
So we will ask, how is your hip rolling on the floor? And now initiate that rolling on the floor by moving your shoulder forward and back. And you will then have attention on your hip and then your shoulder. And then it's your whole self. How does your whole self
Mm.
connect within this movement? So you begin to shift your attention through different areas of your body and noticing how that feels. And for example, we have a lot of breath work lessons.
Mm.
I needed to start with breathe in and expand your ribs. So it
Mm.
gave me something more concrete to focus on. So I would invite and notice the opening of my ribs with my breath. So just saying breath, I don't know why, made me anxious. But noticing how my ribs expanded with my breath started to help me
Mm.
to notice my interoception, noticing my breath, noticing also, I often feel like I'm able to move my pelvis with my breath. And
Mm.
my vocal projection and my voice has been challenged most of my life because I never wanted to do diaphragmatic breathing. That for some reason that just was off limits for me. But I can tilt my pelvis forward and backward with my breath. So it's kind of a sneaky way to get into my breath and noticing my interoception. And once you train yourself on that, you begin to notice, am I thirsty or am I hungry?
Mm.
Is my heart racing because I'm angry, or is my heart racing because I've had too much caffeine? You build the interoception, and then it also builds your proprioception. So how do you
Mm.
navigate through the world, and what is your space that you take up in the world? And in my private practice, I had a client who was so lovely with her words, she would text me after a lesson and she would say, I feel 3 feet taller. I can reach the trees. I'm closer with the trees. I'm showing
Wow.
up and taking up more space in the world, and I feel grounded. And this was somebody who had an eating disorder,
Oh,
and
wow.
she made herself smaller and smaller and smaller.
Mm,
The lessons helped her to feel grounded and understood her space in the world and unabashedly took up more space in the world
wow.
without us ever talking about her eating.
Mm. That's amazing. What a great story. And on that point, actually, sort of building on what you've just said and that idea of interoception, one of the things I spend quite a large time with my clients doing is helping them listen to things like hunger and fullness cues, because that's a big thing that people are often navigating, or some people say that they feel totally disconnected from hunger and fullness cues. How do you think this method can help with something like that?
Uh, Beginning with, am I thirsty or am I hungry? And
Mm,
you begin to find that's actually thirst, and
mm,
water can help satiate me, or it can be not understanding new hunger and what's
yeah,
going to change.
yeah.
So what happened, and everybody's different. And so I don't want to say this method creates this for somebody with an eating disorder, because first, in this method, we don't work with diagnosis at
Mm,
all.
yeah.
I would meet with clients and I would listen to their diagnosis, but often what they believed was their diagnosis, years later they would get back to me and they were like, "You know what? That wasn't the problem at all." And I
Oh,
would be like,
wow.
"Yeah, I know."
How interesting.
We just don't we think about the opportunity, we notice how the body is moving, and we communicate to the nervous system it's safe, because the
Mm,
nervous system cannot learn until it feels safe. So we communicate safety and then we find new options. So I want to be careful with saying this helps this from an eating disorder perspective, because I think everybody's journey and
yeah,
the
you're right.
reasoning for their eating disorder, everybody's different. But what I do know from this method is whatever your diagnosis is, whatever you believe it is, to what the history is, that finding safety and ease and comfort, you can find new patterns and new patterns
Mm,
of movement. And so for me, what shifted was I hated my body for so many years. And this gave me the grounding and I no longer cared what society thought of my body. And so if I gained a little weight or I lost weight, it used to be if somebody said when I was on my thin side and somebody
mm,
would say, "Oh, you need to eat a burger," that would devastate me.
mm,
And if
yeah.
I was on the higher end and somebody's like, "You put on a few pounds," devastate me. It became, I felt so grounded in my body physically that it became how I felt. And I
Mm,
was always looking for finding how I felt. And this was a journey. This wasn't in the first 3 weeks of lessons. This
yeah.
was a consistent practice over time that I felt that sense of grounding. And so many people will say, you need to love your body, you need to love your body. This method is about noticing your body without
Yeah.
judgment.
Yeah. It's a big difference, that, actually. And I think so important, because I think for some people who struggled with a disordered relationship with food and or their body, to suddenly say you need to love your body, very hard to do, but to maybe notice without judgment, that is maybe a stepping stone that they can comfortably step onto. So tell me a bit more about that.
So the neural pathways to, the whole fake it till you make it, just love your body, say affirmations. The neural pathways do not exist
Yeah,
for that.
agreed.
If for
Agreed.
me at this, when I started these lessons, I was 47 years old. I had hated literally since birth, I had hated my body for
Mm,
47
mm,
years. And to just say going to love my body. But what I had done for the first time is I gave my body attention and I noticed it. I noticed how my ribs opened as I breathed. It's always noticing without judgment. It's notice as you push your foot into the ground, does your pelvis get a little bit lighter? So you become kind of a movement detective, a movement scientist. And it's just the curiosity of when I do this, that happens. When I do this, this happens.
mm.
And starting to differentiate that it doesn't matter. And we also think very skeletally. So, a verbal cue I would often give my clients is imagine you are hot candle wax and you are lying on the table and all of your tissue is melting into the table so that only your skeleton emerges. And that would help me to work with them
Mm.
because most people have unnecessary muscular effort and tension. So that verbal cue to let your tissue go, you are only left with a skeleton. And when you start to think skeletally, it doesn't really matter what your weight is. And
Interesting. Yeah.
that was a big shift for me.
Mm. Amazing. I mean, it sounds also interesting. And, if anyone's watching this, tell them a little bit about, or if anyone's watching this and interested, is what I meant to say, tell them a little bit about the app because, like what's on it, how do people get access to it, that kind of thing.
So I built the app and did not launch it until we had 365 lessons because
Oh, wow. A daily
I,
lesson.
because but it, and we launched that way because I wanted people to just use the filters. So the primary engine behind it is filtering by function. So do
Okay.
I want to improve reaching? So we think in this method very functionally, walking, reaching. Some of the most powerful lessons are the walking lessons because as you begin to move more confidently in your walk, we launched that way, but the overwhelming feedback was, you need to guide me. I don't know where to start. So we built a 21 lesson starter series because I wanted people to be able
Mm,
to experience the different teachers. We have 11 different teachers in the app currently. We want to continue to grow that and grow the lessons. Also, the feedback was the crux of the lessons that were 30 minutes long for people who were training their attention for this. We wanted to build and start with shorter lessons to give people a taste. So we have a
mm,
21 lesson starter series to help people adapt to the method. And then after that 21 lessons, which is really interesting, I'm excited to share this with you. We have another 21 lessons. So the first 21 lessons are between 5 and 18 minutes long to get people
mhm.
used
Yeah.
to making this a consistent practice. The next 21 lessons are 20 to 30 minutes.
Mhm.
And I think doing those 21 lessons will give people a taste for if this is for them in their time right now. It may not be right now,
Yeah.
but you can come back in 3 months or 6 months when it is right for you. So we have a 7-day free trial so that people
Mm,
can get a sampling of it. And it's not if it's not right for you today, that's okay. As you percolate on it, as you begin to have greater awareness in your movement, if you want to try it in the future, And then if it is, and you want to continue, I will be completely honest. When you get to the next 21 lessons that are 20 to 30 minutes, you're going to feel bigger changes. They
Wow.
are more of the lessons that reorganize your musculoskeletal system.
Mm.
They are a bit better. If you want to jump, if you've got 20 to 30 minutes and you want to start with that series, you're welcome to do that if you want to use the filters. So we've really built the app to accommodate wherever people are
Mm.
in their movement journey.
Mm. And I suppose what's great about that as well is that if people literally only have a few minutes, then they can put, you can still add something to your day. Whereas if you've got a bit longer, obviously you've got that flexibility around the app, haven't you?
And I think consistency is important. We know there is not research around this specifically on this method, but we know from meditation research that I think it points to 5 minutes of meditation for 30 days
Mm.
reduces depression, anxiety, and inflammation. And so we know that from meditation. And for me, this practice is meditation. So if that is why we have 5 minute lessons, because I think that that daily consistency
Yeah,
is important.
yeah. Better to be consistent, isn't it, than not? And you mentioned earlier when we were chatting before about some amazing research that you discovered about
Yes.
Feldenkrais. Yes, so tell us about that.
I'm grabbing the study because I just found it yesterday and it's important. So I want to get it right. And I'm so excited about this. In 1997, there was a German hospital that did a study and it's peer reviewed. So this isn't one person just
Mm.
thinking this worked. It was peer reviewed. Unfortunately, it was never followed up on and never, I did not even know about this until yesterday. But this hospital in the eating disorder side of it, they had both anorexia nervosa and bulimic patients,
Mm.
and they put 15 of them doing the Feldenkrais awareness through movements and 15 not doing the lessons. Now, obviously, they were also getting psychotherapy and other
Yeah,
treatments within
yeah.
this hospital. So it was in combination of both the traditional therapeutic methods for eating disorders. And they did 9 hours of awareness through movement lessons. And within that, they broke it up over 9 classes over 2 weeks. And the people who did the awareness through movement lessons had increased body acceptance, more contentment with problematic zones in their own health. They had more spontaneous, open, and self confident behavior, decreased feelings of helplessness, decreased wish to return to childhood security, which is a clinical marker for arrested emotional development. And this is where it's really powerful. Development of felt sense of self confidence, and a general process of maturation of their whole personality.
That's amazing.
Peer-reviewed
Yeah,
research. So this method has been around for decades,
yeah.
unfortunately not well funded. So this type
Mm.
of research hasn't gotten to eating
Mm.
disorder clinics. And so I think there is definitely talk of bringing somatics and the bottom up
Yes.
approach to the
Yeah,
traditional top down approach.
yeah.
So
Agree, agree.
the method is the fact of somatics I know is getting out there, but I believe very strongly that specifically the Feldenkrais method, because it was developed by a scientist who had the theory that the brain was plastic and you could change your
Mm.
brain, he developed the lessons not for just noticing your body, but through changing
Yeah,
slowly, gently,
yeah.
and easily.
That's awesome. I mean, what a great piece of research as well, because I think, like you were saying earlier, put some of the science behind, this works. We can talk about the ideas about why it might work and all that, but this actually shows that it does work. And I think, certainly I would recommend it for people as a way, if they are looking for that nervous system regulation or to be more in touch with their bodies or thinking about that interoception, seems like a really great option for people. Um, so we're kind of coming up to the last couple of questions because we've already been chatting for 40 minutes and it goes so quickly. It's amazing. One of the questions I always ask all my guests is, what is the biggest myth you like to debunk? So what is it?
I think it is, as somebody who spent decades in therapy trying to figure out my why, I did a lot of processing on my whys, and therapy was a very important part. And
Mm,
there's things I uncovered in my therapy that has definitely been helpful in my context and my growth. But the bottom up somatically
mm.
is
Yeah.
where is really where the change for me unlocked. And I could not think my way or positive think my way into loving my body.
Mm,
I needed to give my body attention and I needed a bottom up approach for my healing and
mm,
for fundamentally changing. And I will also put out, yes, our brains are plastic and we can change at any age. But I think the younger the people
yeah.
experience this, their brains are
Yeah.
more plastic than my
Yeah.
brain is. And
Yeah.
I saw in my private practice working with younger people how quickly and fundamentally the change occurred
Mm,
when the younger people just needed fewer lessons. They changed much quicker. And
mm,
so getting this message out there and getting people to move out of performance mode and judgment of what society thinks of our bodies, the more we find the confidence in our own
mm,
bodies, the noise, it's not an overnight fix, but when we feel comfortable in how we move, what society thinks of us, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter. It
mm.
matters less.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. I love that. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. So, if people want to find out a bit more about you, where can they find that information and obviously about the app as well? Where can they find that? And I will put links to that in the description below. But
Thank,
yeah.
thank you. Our website is pausture.com, so you can read more about it there, read about who our teachers are. And we are in both the iOS and Google Play Store app stores. And we're on Instagram. And that is where you can find us. And we have a 7-day free trial so that you can see if it's for you. I wanted to just quickly mention, I just did the math on this morning. So that our first 21 lessons is 4 hours of time.
Hmm.
And the second set of 21 lessons is exactly 9 hours. So
Wow.
the fact
Yeah.
that it mirrors that 9 hour research, I thought
Yes.
was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Brilliant. And like I say, I'll put those links in the description below for anyone who wants to go and check that out. So I just want to say thank you so much, Beverly. It's been really a real pleasure to chat to you. It's been so interesting. I didn't really know very much about Feldenkrais before we started chatting. It was like a month ago or something. And now that I've had a chance to try the app, try it for myself, I really like it. I think it did take a little bit of time for me to get used to. It's very different. I think I have also realized that, over the years, I definitely need help just calming my nervous system down and have tried several things. But actually, it really, that whole thing that we were talking about earlier, the taking it off the visual focus and onto just focusing on your body, your own body, it's a very new way, different way of operating, I think. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Some people immediately are like, this is amazing. This is for
Yeah.
me. And some people are like, I see the potential, maybe.
Yeah.
So I always just say, if it's not right for you, it may just not be right for you yet. And the
Yeah.
more you just having awareness of how you're moving, if it wakes that up over
Yeah.
time, it may be right for you at another time.
Yeah. So true. Well, thank you very much. And thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed connecting with you.